Hey gang, using the promo code MTGMudsta, one word, all caps, will get you 10% off orders of $10 or more at Flipside Gaming, Original Magic Art, and orders of singles at Multizone. If they don't have what you're looking for, you could check out TCG Player and use my affiliate link to help support the channel. Looking for a way to bling out your deck and not spend a fortune? Alter Sleaze can help with that, and you can help with the channel at the same time by using my affiliate link. Or, if you're looking to join the Goblin Gang, you can always support me through Patreon. In today's game, I'm playing my Horde of Notions deck, keeping a counterspell, Stomping Grounds, Unsubstantiate, Prairie Stream, Scampering Scorcher, Farseek, and Nature's Lore. Nick is playing his Kaza deck, keeping a Mercurial Chemister, Docent of Perfection, Talisman of Creativity, Insidious Will, Wayfarer's Bauble, an Island, and a Mountain. Martin is playing his Karn Silver Golem deck, keeping Phyrexia's Core, Buried Ruin, Darksteel Forge, Majoring Network, Karn Liberated, Soul Ring, and a Lux Cannon. Max is playing Marchesa the Black Rose, keeping Temple of Malice, 2 Mountains, Dockside Extortionist, Phyrexian Metamorph, Songmad Treachery, and a Skull Clamp. Nick wins the die roll and starts us off. Nick plays an island and taps it to cast a Wayfarer's Bauble. Martin plays a Wastes, tapping it for 1 as well, and uses that to cast a Soul Ring. Max plays a tap Temple of Malice, scrying 1. I play a tap Stomping Grounds, and pass back to Nick. Nick's turn has him playing a Mountain, and he passes as he cracks the Wayfarer's Bauble to go and find a basic. Martin plays a Buried Ruin, and taps out for a Lux Cannon. He taps the Lux Cannon to put a charge counter onto it as he passes turn. Max plays the tapped land half of Songmad Treachery, and we see a Songmad Ruins come into play. He then pays 1 for a Skull Clamp and passes. My turn has me drawing, and I play a tap Prairie Stream, passing. Nick plays a tap Steam Vents, and then casts Talisman of Creativity. He takes 1 from it as he taps it for colored mana, and his island to cast Kaza, Royal Chaser. Surf's up, dude! Martin plays a Phyrexia's Core, and then taps 2 mana, dropping Voltaic Servant. He then taps his Lux Cannon, adding a counter to it, and at the end of turn, untaps the cannon with the Servant trigger, and then retaps it to add a 3rd counter. Max plays a Mountain, and drops a pretty early Dockside Extortionist, but still gains 4 treasures as it enters. He then taps his land to equip the clamp onto it, and passes. I untap and draw. I play a Glacial Fortress, and then tap 2 for Nature's Lore. I announce I'll find a Shock with a forest in it, taking 2 so it comes in untapped, and then cast Farseek before passing and searching for my 2 lands. Nick plays an island, and passes. Martin plays a Majoring Network, and taps his cannon to put another charge counter onto it. He passes, untapping it with a Voltaic Servant at the end of turn. Max plays a Mountain, and taps some lands, using a treasure to help cast Marchesa. Moving to combat, Martin uses the cannon to blow Marchesa up before Max can declare attacks, and he then passes through his phases, and Max passes to me. I draw, and pass. At the end of turn, Nick casts Nerumeha, Master Wizard, but doesn't have a spell to copy. He then just moves to his turn. Nick draws and thinks about attacking. He wants to swing at Martin, but the Servant has a good chunk of toughness, so he just passes. Martin then activates his Majoring Network at the end of turn to put a counter onto it, and I decide to also cast a Shared Summons, going to find 2 creature cards with different names to put to hand. Nick responds to this once he gains priority, and taps Kaza to reduce his next spell by 2, casting Insidious Will. He decides to copy my spell rather than counter it, and Nick then gets to go and find 2 creatures first. Martin casts a Trading Post, and then taps his Lux Cannon. I finish tutoring, revealing Risen Reef and Flamekin Harbinger, while Nick reveals a Fate Stitcher and a Shapesharer. At the end of turn, Martin does what he's been doing most turns, untapping his cannon with his Servant. Max plays a Mountain for turn, and taps his lands plus some treasures to cast Combustible Gearhulk. It enters, and he picks Martin, who has Max Mill. Max hits 11 converted mana cost worth of cards, dealing 11 to Martin. I untap and cast my newly tutored for Risen Reef. It enters, and I look at my top card, which isn't a land, so it goes to my hand. I then play a Flamekin Harbinger, resolving the Risen Reef trigger first. It's a mountain, which I put into play tapped. I then go and find an elemental creature card to put on top of my library. I reveal Vesperlark, putting it on top of my library, and passing to Nick. Nick draws and plays out Shapesharer, passing. At the end of turn, Martin taps the cannon to put a third charge counter onto it. Martin draws and charges his Lux Cannon, because let's face it, it hasn't let him down yet. He untaps it at the end of his turn as he passes to Max. Max plays a Phyrexian Metamorph in his main phase, losing 2 life instead of paying for the Phyrexian mana cost, and has it come in as a copy of the Dockside Extortionist. He gets more treasures as it comes in, and then plays it a Woestrider, which as it enters, makes a goat token. The goat doesn't even get a token though, as Max uses a treasure token to clamp it, drawing 2 cards as the token dies. One of those cards is a swamp which Max plays, and he casts a Demon's Disciple. I pass priority, but as it moves to Nick, he activates Kaza, reducing the cost of the next spell by 3. He then taps his lands and a talisman to cast Explosion, where X is 3, and deals 3 to my Risen Reef, and gets to draw 3 cards. Martin also responds, and sacrifices the Voltaic Servant to his trading post, drawing a card. The Disciple then enters, and we all sacrifice a creature or planeswalker if we can. Max then swings the Gear Hulk at Martin, who blows it up with a Lux Cannon. I draw and evoke Vesperlark in my main phase. It comes in and leaves immediately, letting me bring back the Risen Reef. It coming in triggers itself, which has me looking at my top card and putting out a Hollowed Fountain into play tapped. I then pay 4 mana to cast a Scampering Scorcher, which once it hits the stack, has Martin responding using Warping Whale to exile my Risen Reef. My Elemental then enters and makes some tokens, but it's not as awesome as it would have been with the Risen Reef out, and I just pass to Nick. Nick plays a Command Tower and casts Goblin Electromancer. Adeliz then comes in, and Kaza is tapped once more, with Nick casting Volcanic Visions, returning Expansion Explosion to hand. This wipes the board on his opponent's sides, and instead of letting his creatures die, Max sacrifices his creatures to scry with the Woestrider. Moving to combat, Nick then hits Max for 3. Martin draws and uses his Majoring Network, which he'd been adding counters to help cast a Thran Dynamo. He still has enough mana after that to cast a Mirror Battlesphere, making 4 Mirror tokens as it enters, and passes to Max. Max plays an Exotic Orchard as his land drop, and taps 6 for Marchesa. He clamps her before passing to me. I play a Rootbound Crag, and tap 1 of each color to cast a Horde of Notions. I then play a Creeping Trailblazer, and go at Nick with my commander. It connects for 6, and I pass turn. Nick plays an island, and then casts a Fate Stitcher that he'd revealed earlier. He swings Adeliz at me, and passes. Martin taps out in his main phase for a Darksteel Forge, passing. Max draws, and plays a Mountain. He asks for who's on the throne, and then casts a Blood Tracker in his main phase, and once the vampire resolves, pays 1 black to activate it, losing 2 life, and puts a +1/+1 counter onto it. He then swings Marchesa at me, as I have the highest life total, and her Dethrone trigger puts a +1/+1 counter onto herself. I then take the hit from his commander, and Max passes. I play Dragonskull Summit, and then tap enough for a Regal Force. Martin responds, putting a counter onto his Lux Cannon, and the Force then enters, with me drawing 3, and I pass to Nick. Nick plays an island for turn, and counts up his lands, not to mention his wizards. He then plays out a Docent of Perfection. He once more thinks about attacking, but decides to just pass. Martin plays a Sanctum of Eternity, and then puts to stack all his dust. Max passes priority, but once it reaches to me, I cast Unsubstantiate to buy us a turn, bouncing the spell back to Martin's hand. Martin then passes to Max. Max untaps, and then plays an Underworld Sentinel. He asks for life totals again, but decides against attacking at the last minute, and just decides to pass. I untap and play another check land, a Sulphur Falls. 4 mana gets me a Clever Impersonator, which resolves and comes in as another copy of Regal Force. This has me drawing 4 cards this time, and one of them is a Smoke Braider, which I then cast. I then tap 2 mana for a Cryptolith Rites, and arrange my creatures based on what can be tapped before passing. At the end of turn, Nick casts Explosion and targets Martin after tapping Kaza and then untapping her with a Fate Stitcher and then tapping her again. Martin responds using the Lux Cannon to destroy the Docent of Perfection before it transforms at least, but Nick still gets the Wizard token from it seeing him cast a spell. Martin then takes 12, while Nick draws 12. Nick untaps and draws only 1 card, which is sad compared to the 12 he drew a second ago. He plays a Mountain for turn, and then pays 5 mana for Double Vision. He passes, discarding down to 7, and at the end of turn, Martin flashes out a Shimmermere. Martin plays an Urza's Tower for his land drop, and recasts the All Is Dust. Max and I have no response, but as Nick gains priority, he casts Mystic Confluence, picking the pay 3 or its counter mode twice and draw a card once. He gets a copy of it, so draws 2 in the end, and Martin then passes. Max plays a tapped Crumbling Necropolis and goes to combat. He swings the team at Nick, who is currently on the throne. With this Sentinel swinging, Max gets to exile his Dockside Extortionist from his graveyard, and then adds a +1/+1 counter to all of his creatures attacking because of Dethrone. Nick declares no blocks, and Max is happy enough to just deal 15. Max then uses the escape mechanic on his Woe Strider, exiling some cards from his graveyard to cast it from his graveyard. He then passes, and at the end of turn, I tap my 3 elementals plus 2 lands to activate my Horde of Notions. I bring back the Flamekin Harbinger, and as it enters, I tutor for an elemental card to put on top of my library. It's Temur Omnath, and we then move to my turn. I draw Omnath for my turn, and tap enough to cast it. It enters, seeing 7 elementals, and I blast Max with it, who acts surprised but honestly should be thanking me for keeping him off the throne. I then pay 6 for a Spitting Image, and make a token copy of the Regal Force again, drawing 5 cards this time. Unfortunately, they're all lands. I play a tap Watery Grave, and Omnath sees a land coming in. This lets me put a counter onto the Horde, and draw a card. I then cast Soul Ring, and discard down to 7. At the end of turn, Fate Stitcher untaps Kaza, who is tapped to reduce Nick's next spell by 6. He casts Pull from Tomorrow, where X is 7. He draws 7 cards and discards 1, and then resolves the Double Vision copy, drawing 7 more and discarding another card. At the end of turn, Martin also puts a counter onto his Lux Cannon. Nick's turn has him untapping and drawing a card. He plays an island for turn, and has the Shapesharer become a copy of Fate Stitcher. He then taps Kaza, and untaps her with the Fate Stitcher, then taps her again, and then untaps her again with the Shapesharer version of Fate Stitcher, and then taps her a 3rd time. His next spell is reduced by 18 colorless, and he taps 5 lands to cast Rolling Thunder for 21. He gets a copy of it from Double Visions, but still feels like that's probably not enough, and casts a Dualcaster Mage once the copies hit the stack. We did this a bit quick, since Nick is supposed to pick the targets and the amount of damage he wants to deal to them before the spell hits the stack, so he has the Thunder deal 6 to Martin, 8 to me, and 7 to Max. His copies have to do 6, 7, and 8, but he's still able to change the targets at least. With the Dualcaster Mage still in the stack though, I counter it with Counterspell. He then has Martin take another 6 from the copy, and then swaps the targets for the 7 and the 8 with me and Max, so we end up each taking a total of 15. He then passes, discarding down to 7. At the end of turn, Martin sacks a Mirror token to draw a card with the Trading Post. Martin draws for turn, and plays a Mishra's Factory as his land for turn. He casts Karn in his main phase, and then pays 1 to animate the Darksteel Forge into a creature with Karn's ability. He goes to combat, swinging the Forge and the Battlesphere at Nick. With the Battlesphere attacking, Martin is able to tap some mirrors to trigger the ability, dealing 4 to Nick and pumping the battle sphere by +4/+0. Nick then jumps, and we move to Martin's second main phase. This has Martin casting a Basalt Monolith, and then announcing he'll move through his phases to pass turn. At the end of the second main phase, Max sacrifices the Underworld Sentinel to the Woe Strider, getting a Scry trigger, and also returning to the field the Dockside Extortionist. He gains 14 treasures this time around, and then scries 1. Max then sacrifices the Blood Tracker, drawing 2 from it dying, and then scrying 1. He then sacrifices Marchesa, scrying 1, and keeping it on top this time. We then move to Martin's end of turn, and Max brings back all of his creatures with Marchesa's delay return trigger. Max draws and plays a Shivan Reef. Moving to combat, since I'm on the throne, he swings everything at me. Max exiles Sir Conrad with the Sentinels on attack trigger, and all of his creatures attacking get a +1/+1 counter because I'm on the throne. Before moving to blocks though, I throw out one of Crim's favorite blue spells, Aetherize. Max has to make the hard choice and decides to sacrifice the Sentinel, scrying 1, and Sir Conrad comes in. He bottoms it, and then sacrifices the Extortionist, and we all lose 1 from Sir Conrad. He then sacrifices the Blood Tracker, drawing a card, and we all take another 1 from Conrad. Max then sacrifices the Goat, dealing another 1. Marchesa is then next, with Max scrying 1 and dealing another 1. Aetherize then resolves, with the Woe Strider going back to Max's hand. He then recasts the Woe Strider in his second main phase, and then activates Sir Conrad to mill everyone for 1, but unfortunately whiffs on creatures. He does it again, this time hitting 2 creatures, which has his opponents losing 2. He goes for a third activation, hitting only 1 creature this time and dealing 1. We then move to his end step, and 4 creatures come back because of Marchesa's delayed triggers. With them leaving the graveyard, Conrad sees it and deals 4 more to each of Max's opponents. We realize we're pretty much done for at this point since Max can sacrifice them all again to wipe us all out, and we all agree Max is the winner. Game review time. In this game, I think I focused a little bit too much and put all of my eggs in one basket, really kind of trying to ride that Risen Reef train. I do think I did a pretty decent job of making sure to keep my elementals around, with stuff like the Unsubstantiate on the All Is Dust, and the Aetherize hopefully to take Max out of combat. Unfortunately, Max was able to win even against the Aetherize, which was pretty sweet to see. Marchesa plus Sir Conrad plus that Underworld Sentinel did a lot of work this game. Nick's Kaza deck was insane. Being able to tap Kaza multiple times in one turn and reduce a spell by up to 18 colorless is mind-blowingly awesome. I love it. I do think there's probably a lot more going on for Martin's Karn deck, but we did get to see one of the coolest pieces, Lux Cannon, doing a lot of damage to his opponents. Please be sure to tune in every Monday and Thursday at 11 AM Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed new video. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMudsta. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/mtgmudsta. And lastly, you can check me out when I stream at twitch.tv/mtgmudsta. This video is brought to you in support by my patrons. If you're looking for a way to help out the channel, please be sure to visit the link below. Thank you all for watching this video, and don't forget, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.